retirement and compensation. She has proposed a legislative piece called the HEAL Act, which serves as the benefits package she says the American people are owed. So, Jasmine, again, we're happy to have you. I'll let you cover anything that I may have missed in my brief intro, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, and I think this is my first time running for office. I had absolutely no appetite to do anything political at all, but the state of our government, I felt it was immoral not to do something a little bit more than just donating and voting. And what I have found is the root cause. The HEAL Act is a root cause policy. So it's treating the actual disease versus the symptoms. And what I found is like the number one blocker to any true reform is truly the corruption of our government, with PACs and lobbyists buying our Congress representatives, essentially. And that's why we continue to see and will see um, representatives voting against their voters' best interests, but aligning more with their donors. So that's like the biggest thing that I've seen where I'm just I knew the government was corrupt, but I did not realize that it was at this level of corruption.
Yeah, I think we're all having a little bit of a realization as these races go on and we learn a little
Hmm.
bit more about what's happening. So
Yeah.
great. Well, you've touched a little bit on this already, but what motivated you to run and what sets you apart from the other progressive or grassroots candidates?
Yeah, so I work in human resources, as you mentioned, and I design employee benefits both nationally and globally. So I see how other countries invest in their citizens with their tax dollars, with free healthcare and education. And I knew, again, I wanted to be more politically involved. I didn't know exactly what that path would look like. And when the big beautiful bill passed and they said 50,000 people were going to die a year from preventative diseases because they could not afford healthcare, it felt immoral not to do something, considering that is my wheelhouse. And I was actually going to support a candidate, and not I don't think everybody was in the race at that time, but when I looked at their websites, it just kind of had the slogans of like Medicare for all or I'll fight for you, and that as a voter, I find that that's one of the things that I've actually become very frustrated about with our politics is that there is no strategy, there's not a game plan, and I don't know why that is, right? Like, because if we're hiring someone for one of the most important offices, right, to represent our district, it's frustrating that people don't have a plan, have a strategy. And so I built my campaign how I would want to see it as a voter. That's why I have the signature policy, like this is my long-term goal. But then on my FAQ section, I have detailed roadmaps and strategy of how I would like bring in money into District 7, because we have to realize that we are fighting an administration that is not following the rules. So we need to out strategize them because right now the Democratic Party, I don't see a strategy there. I really don't. I know it's a big tent, but 72% of people want campaign finance reform. That is something maybe we can leverage and get to. So that's how I design mine, and that's how I'm different than other candidates. I think from based on what I understand, and I'm not trying to throw shade, is like they always listen to their consultants and do what their consultants want, which the consultants are not your voters. You should be listening to your voters. And that's how I built the HEAL Act is by listening and understanding like what is the root cause of like all the pain points in the affordability crisis. So that's how I'm different than the other candidates is just the strategy behind basically what I'm running on.
Awesome. Yeah, and we do have a question or two on the HEAL Act coming up, so excited to hear a little bit more about your plan and how it would work. So sounds great. Um, all right, the next question. The seventh district contains some of the widest wealth and health disparities in the country, from the Gold Coast to West Garfield Park. How does your platform specifically bridge that gap? And what are a few day one federal priorities that you believe would have the most immediate impact for the seventh district specifically?
Yeah, so when I look at the seventh district, I kind of look at it as if I'm designing a policy or a benefit package for employees, right? And what I look at is essentially who needs the most help immediately, right? And if you look at those historically red line districts, they have aging infrastructure, they have low income, and they're struggling significantly. And I'm a very data-driven person. I think you need data. Data clears out the biases for the most part, even though data can be biased in itself. But looking at that, so the first strategies I would do, I'm actually doing it right now, is educating not only myself, but also every single person in the district. Like with the SNAP benefits, there's that work requirement, which is ridiculous. I read the policy. There's actually a loophole where you don't have to do the work requirement if you have anxiety, and it could be temporary anxiety or depression. And I would argue all of us have that because of ICE in our government. So that's one way people can get out. There's also a bunch of different ways they can be exempt, essentially. And then also healthcare. I did a ton of research, and nonprofit clinics actually have um, they can provide healthcare to folks. And people think that's because they have to actually get income from the federal level, and that's not true. Some of these nonprofit clinics do 6 times the federal poverty level, which is huge. So I actually helped an Indivisible member at one of the meet and greets because they recently got unemployed, and I was like, "Wait, you can do this. You are eligible for this." And I sent them to my website, and I have been doing that. Like as soon as I created those how-to guides, I've been sending it and talking about it in every space like this one. And that's my number one strategy, is like, how can we take the benefits we have now and start leveraging them to help our constituents? Because there's so many archaic laws and so many house rules that people are not leveraging, and it's because they're spending like 4 or 5 hours a day, Congress representative calling donors versus actually doing their work. So that would be the stark difference between me and the traditional politics, is what I'll say.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Um, you've been talking a little about, some of the Congress people in office now that are, kind of doing politics as usual and talking to donors and not listening to people. Um, who would be some of your allies as you're trying to kind of get those day one priorities,
Yeah.
enacted?
It would definitely be there's a true progressive caucus. So I
Yeah.
would align with them because there's how like they say names like we're the fight for like Citizens United. Sounds like a good name, but it wasn't, right? So there's a progressive caucus that is progressive only by name, and there's a true progressive caucus. So I'd align with them. And also there are Republicans who want to ban PACs and lobbyists,
Mhm.
and or who want to ban the committee tax and party dues, like Republican from Kentucky, Thomas Massey. I would partner with him to stop the committee tax and the party dues within Congress. We don't agree on a lot of things, but that's the thing, is what can we agree on and what can we push forward on that agreement. Oh, and Democratic Ro Khanna is also he also partners with Republican Thomas Massey as well.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. All right. So the third question, I think many of us, myself included, can attest to hearing a lot of people despairing over the last few weeks about the multi-way ticket split that we could get amongst the progressive candidates in this race.
Hmm.
Do you see this as a problem? If not, would you mind explaining kind of why not?
Yeah, part of me is like, well, that's democracy choice, right? And but the problem is that voters, I think the biggest thing that is concerning for me is that voters usually vote on name recognition. They don't really look at the policies. Indivisible obviously will be different, but the average voter, they look at name recognition. So those mailers that go out. So it's really, even if the ticket wasn't split, it sometimes it's just like the one who has the most money to send out those mailers. But I also am hopeful because more and more people are talking about APAC, even average voters who are like, "Are you taking APAC money?" Like, I don't know what it is exactly, but I know it's bad. And I was like, "Yes, this is what it is. This is why it's not great." And it just always comes down to the corruption of our politics with big money in politics. So I do see it as an issue, but it's also like people are waking up. So I'm hopeful that people will stop doing this parasocial relationship that they have with like elected officials and candidates. Because I've said this in other forums and I'll say it here, and I know I am a candidate, but no elected official or candidate is our friend. They are asking us to hire them for a job. So we need to start looking them as an employee and assessing like their actual policy and their strategy versus like their personality, if you were, their likability. And yes, you have to build relationships, and that is key. But if you don't have a strategy, you're not really going to go that far.
Yep. Yep. I think that makes sense. Um, and you kind of hinted at this earlier, so now I definitely want to follow up with it. If you were just a voter not running in this district, and you were picking another candidate to support in this race, who would that be?
Yeah, we were asked this at the UIC debate, and I would align with Anthony Driver.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. So now we'll move into some of the more specific questions to your platform that we had.
Hmm.
The first one, so you've talked a bit about the HEAL Act. Um, it would be great if you can just kind of expand upon it a little bit. But specifically, it's definitely ambitious, it's
Yep.
structural. Can you kind of walk us through your strategy for making progress on it? Would there be different things you would prioritize first? Would you build coalitions? How would you
Hmm.
kind of navigate that and move it forward?
Yeah, so I do think there is already like a appetite for universal free high quality healthcare. Everyone's saying Medicare for all, but that is not really good enough. And I also feel like the voters are just completely fed up. They look at Texas and they're like, Texas actually might go purple or swing blue because of how frustrated folks are. And also Democratic Ro Khanna from California, he keeps saying like we need the new FDR deal. We need an FDR type policy. That's the HEAL Act. It literally is the New Deal 2.0. So I think getting buy-in, I think it's there because there are people who I was giving flyers to, the voters, and they're like, "Wait, where can I vote on this? Where is this in Congress? Like, can I see it?" And I was like, "No, I wrote this." And it's based off of like a lot of what other Congress representatives have been fighting for. So a lot of my sources because I cite all my sources, I'm an English major, so that's really important to me. And even in there, you can see these are current representatives or past representatives who have been educating it. So I feel like they've kind of built the road, but we're now at like a precipice, if you will, where America's just kind of fed up, even Republicans. So I would partner with every single person that would align on this. If they don't align on everything, then it's like, okay, can we at least align on banning PACs and lobbyists? Or can we at least align on a living wage? Like, what can we align on? And for those candidates, and I do know there are some representatives that have truly been bought. I would actually go campaign in their district because something about me is like, I'm not scared to go on Fox News. I'm not scared to go in a heavy red district. Like I work in corporate America. Like there's a lot of Republicans there. There's also a lot of people who don't agree with me. So it's just going to the voters because Bernie Sanders did that, right? He went with AOC to West Virginia, and at the end of the tour, there were so many people who said, "Yeah, we want Medicare for all." So I would go and campaign, and I think that's what the Democratic, at least the true progressives, should be doing is going to these red states because you already know your blue states are going to vote for you and vote for this, and they'll advocate for it. But those red states, that's where we need to get into because we have to bypass the media because the media has been bought by the 1% too. And so that's what I would do. That's my long-term strategy.
Yeah, I think we we hear sometimes that when people are, given progressive policies without the name progressive, without Democrat attached, they're like, "Oh, yes, we like this," no matter how they voted in the past. So that
Hmm.
makes sense.
That's why on
Um,
my flyer, I don't put Democrat. I leave it
yeah,
alone.
yeah, there you go. I mean, it makes sense. If you could only focus on one pillar of the HEAL Act during your first term, which would it be and why?
It would definitely be ban PACs and lobbyists. They're the root cause. We'll never
Yeah.
get gun reform with them in there. And I know some people are going to say there's some good PACs and lobbyists. And in my opinion, there is no such thing if they have more influence on the government than the average voter. That's not democracy, that's an oligarchy. So I don't think there is. And let's just say, yes, there are good PACs and lobbyists and there are bad PACs and lobbyists. The good PACs are not winning, and they won't win because the bad PACs they just have more money. They have more money, and they control the media. So it's like we really have to level set that this strategy that you guys are doing, which is PAC versus PAC, lobbyists versus lobbyists, is not working for the American people or a democracy. And so we just have to have a level set and just be like, if we truly want a government that's not an oligarchy, we have to take this step.
Makes sense. You talked about some of the, um, how you would try and build a coalition with different representatives to help kind of get your HEAL Act moving along. Are there any advocacy groups that you would work with or grassroots groups?
Definitely like the DSA. I feel like the Democratic Socialists of America, that this pretty much aligns with everything that they want.
Yeah.
For the most part, Indivisible, every civic group I can think of, and like I'm building those relationships now. I went to the Proviso Democratic meetup, and they were meeting actually across the street from Broadview. And when I went there, nobody really knew me. And they were very skeptical, which I totally understand. Like me coming in first time running, I get it. And the Speaker of the House, Chris Welch, was kind enough to let me stand up and do my little, like, 2, 3 minute speech. And when I talked about weaponizing and leveraging every loophole, every law, every house rule to fight back, and talked about like the different things I've already built to help the community. So many people literally beelined it to me after that, giving me their contact information, saying we have to connect. This is really good. And even at like we had a Garfield forum, like I got off that stage and people swarmed me. And they were like, because you actually gave me an answer. You didn't give me your resume from what you did in the past. You didn't say, I'll fight for you. You didn't talk about we need to band together. You actually gave me strategy. I stayed in there talking for a really long time. And then I left and I was walking to my car and somebody got out of his car and he's like, I was actually waiting for you. I knew you were going to talk it up. I want to talk about your strategy. I loved your ideas. So it's just like, I can see the sense that like voters, like they want a leader who actually has a plan and not just like ideas.
Definitely. All right. Next question. So you've chosen not to take PAC or corporate money. How much and much of your campaign has relied on boots on the ground organizing, direct engagement? You've talked about that just now. How has this approach shaped the way that you spend your time on the campaign trail compared to opponents with large war chests?
Yeah, I think the thing is like I'm able to study more and research more versus calling donors because a lot of what other candidates are probably doing right now, I don't know their whole schedule, so I don't want to throw shade, but like they're calling donors, and when they get huge PAC money, I'm wary of it because it's like, what promises did you make? Like how does this impact your voting in the future? Like, do you feel like you'll have to be loyal to these PACs? And that's just like my biggest concern. So that's why when I go into forums, like I have answers to things because I like prep and I do my research, and I'm learning and developing so much as I like learn new things. And I'm also seeing other candidates basically try to steal my talking points as the forums. And I do call them out on it. As I'm sure some folks know, I have no problem calling people out. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter who how much influence they have. Like the whole point of being a Congress representative is to uh, call out things when they're not benefiting folks. And I also just felt like, hey, if you gave me credit and said, yes, I agree with you, but I want to focus on this, I'd be like, fine, you gave me credit. But to not give me any credit, no, we're going to have a discussion in the open in front of people.
That makes sense. I think, yeah, it's um I've learned a lot about all of the candidates, but that's kind of why I still keep going to the forums and just to see what happens and the discourse, how it evolves. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
One thing that you've mentioned in some forums as well is the committee taxes in Congress that often force
Yes.
members to rely on lobbyists. How will you kind of avoid the pay to play dynamic and remain an effective legislator?
Yeah, so I'm not going to do it. That point blank period. And Thomas Massey is kind of my example. I know I keep going back to him, but he does not do the pay to play system and he still gets on committees, and it's because of the leverage he has with his voters because he actually does his job. And he gets primaried. I think he's getting primaried this time around too because he's pushing to release the Epstein files, and I don't agree with a lot of his policies, don't get me wrong, and I'm not going to change like my values or anything to appease him. But like that's an example that I have. AOC has a ton of monies from individual donors. That's why she doesn't have to pay to play system. But here's my perspective. If I'm doing my job and I'm actually helping my constituents, it doesn't matter who primaries me as long as I'm in on boots on the ground going to where they are and helping them, I'm building that relationship with them. And I've already leveraged different ways without even being in Congress, like those how-to guides that I made. And there's just so many, there's like the House rule book is 1,000 pages long, 1,000 pages long. And I can go in there and start researching and start weaponizing this. And actually, you can't get sued if what you say on the floor. So yeah, I'm going to be saying a lot of corruption about it. And that's kind of how I do it because I know that is going to be an uphill battle. So like the other things that I mentioned within bringing federal funding back, like every Congress representative gets community funded projects. Like that is something we're guaranteed. It's up to 20 million that you can bring back for specific 15 projects within your district. Also grants, like I'm going to hire a grant director and a coordinator because there's 1 trillion in grant money out there. But the problem is like grants are meant to be exhausting to apply to. It's done that way on intentionally. So if I can go in and teach all these local nonprofits that are truly trying to help how to write a grant, also let them know when grants are coming in. There's also federal surplus um, that if a government gets new equipment like laptops or anything like that, they have to donate their old ones. So as a Congress representative, you can actually scoop those up for free. So I can give those to my schools, my libraries, and they also have vehicles, so I can work with food pantries to get them vehicles so they can drive and drop off the food that's needed for residents that may not be able to make it to the food pantry. So there's so many other ways to combat this, and I think eventually, if I get enough like airtime and I keep calling out the corruption, it will force them to put me on a committee, same as they did with Thomas Massey. So it's just like, yeah, I'm just going to be a thorn in their side, a lot of it I feel like is like you have to manage people to do their job is what I see in a very bloated organization. That's what you have to do. And so that's what I would do. There's a ton of ethics rules that you can file or complaints, like attorney general complaints and stuff like that. So that's also what I would be doing. Like, I'm not calling donors, I'm literally doing the work and weaponizing every law and rule.
Awesome. All right, so on to the third question here. So, you support democracy reforms like ranked choice voting and term
Hmm.
limits, issues many voters might be less familiar with, but you argue are urgent. Can you talk a little more about why these reforms are critical for District 7 and the rest of the country right now?
Yeah. Well, it's a perfect example in a 13 split race, right? If you had ranked choice voting, that would kind of solve the
Yep,
like concern of splitting the ticket. So that's one great
definitely.
example of it. For term limits, I don't believe in lifetime terms. Those should be either every 10 years get elected just because like they're not representing the people, right? And then in terms of the presidency, yeah, I believe those term limits are good and we should keep them. In terms of Congress, though, I think here's my issue with term limits on that. If you still have the corruption of PACs and lobbyists, it doesn't matter. The term limits, that's treating the symptom. It's not curing the disease because those PACs and lobbyists, they're just going to hire that person that you termed out as a lobbyist and for their corporation, and then they're going to put another puppet in place. And so that's not going to fix it. What I think we should do is do an age limit in Congress, like the retirement age. Like once you hit that retirement age, um, enjoy your life, enjoy your retirement, right? And if you can't afford to retire, that's the fault of the government, right? Like we need to fix that. So that's what I feel. And yeah, I also think our retirement age should be lower, but that's just me because I look at the other countries and what they have, and I was like, I want those European benefits.
Could not agree more. Um, if you had to prioritize, working on ranked choice voting or term limits first, what would you prioritize?
Probably ranked choice voting because it would probably get a new pool of people in, to be honest. And
Fair.
I think
Yeah.
Oak Park is I think they are doing like local ranked choice voting or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but they're trying it out. And like, I just think it's a really great thing to have. And it can be like, when you first learn about it, you're like, wait, how does this work? But then when you like understand it, you're like, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think there are a couple like local areas that have passed it, but hopefully
Hmm.
at some point, hopefully in the state or at least the city of Chicago would be great.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we've reached the point of audience questions. I will take a look here and see what has come through. Um, a follow up on the ranked choice voting conversation. Does that reward more centrist Democrats, though, do you think?
I don't think so, because I mean, if I had a ranked choice voting, like say I had this ticket, I'd be like, I'm going with the most progressive because I'm a hardcore progressive, so I'd go that. I was like, okay, this is the second least progressive, third least, fourth least. So I think people would be more risky with their votes, right? Because there's like
Yeah.
a backup and a backup. So I think it would actually free voting a little bit more so that they're not constricted into one choice.
Yeah. So you don't have to have that in the back of your mind. Well, who can win versus who I want?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. That's always tough. Let's see here. Just waiting for a couple more questions to come in.
I'll jump in and say if you have a question and you want to raise your hand and ask it, that is also great. Megan, I would go to we on we do have a slightly smaller group today. I think the State of the Union probably pulled some people away. Um, but Megan, I would go to a couple in the question bank, and we'll give people time to form a question if they have one. Feel free to
Yeah, we've
submit it in the chat directly to me, Eric Johnson, or feel free to raise your hand and we can call on you.
perfect. Yeah, we've definitely got more. So I think we'll start with kind of going off of the topic of Democrats currently in office. Um, if you were elected and Democrats do take back the House, would you support Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker, and why or why not?
No, I wouldn't. It's the most straightforward answer is he's been bought. Like he's a corporate Democrat, and I would argue, yeah, people say the Democratic is a big tent now, and it's like you're a corporate Democrat, you're just a Republican. It's people put Democrat on their name because again voters are like Democrat means safe. That is not the case, y'all. Like we have to be looking at these policies. We have to be looking at if they're not giving you a direct answer, as we saw with the Senate race, right? They had the three folks and they were asking them about like APAC and like they would not give a direct answer. And it's like they're not progressives and they're not for us. And the problem is like the Speaker of the House, it's and they go over it in this documentary that I watched that talks about committee and party dues is like it's usually the person who has the most money that gets it, unfortunately. But I would not vote for him. I wouldn't vote for him. He's bought, and I would be caught. And I think I'm the only person in the race who's saying like he's been bought, he's corrupt. Um, and I'm not scared to say it essentially.
Yeah, I think that that makes sense, and it's definitely part of what we're seeing in the Illinois Senate race, which is it's just so frustrating
Yeah.
to see that. Okay, so these topics are kind of jumping around just because this is our question bank, but
Yeah.
you've talked about, what you've learned in the corporate HR space that you'll apply to your time in Congress. What's one practice in the insurance or benefit system that you witnessed that most voters would find shocking?
I think it's more so like how hard you have to fight to get what you're paying for. Like you're paying for insurance. For example, we in the corporate world, your insurance will go up 10 to 12% every year. That's just the baseline, unfortunately. And I remember we were with Blue Cross Blue Shield and they were going to charge us like a 30% increase because we had very high claims. And I was like, I can't, there's no way. There's no way I'm going to give that to my employees. That is not a reasonable increase. Um, and so we ended up moving to a different vendor, which happened to be UHC. And that's where I started. This was before like the CEO shooting or anything like that. But they were systematically denying the claims. And I had to get on a call with the vendor, like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is what we're paying for. And it was like every excuse, it was so hard to just get them to coverage it that we were like threatening to cut the contract because there was of basically they were not upholding their contract, so it was like a violation of our contract. And that's when they finally started to like, oh, letting these things go. And it's all because it's for profit. Like I don't think healthcare should be for profit because what companies end up doing, in my opinion, is that they will never cure you. They'll just keep treating you because it's cheaper to treat you than to cure you. Or sorry, it's more profitable to treat you than to cure you. And so that's where it's just like it's it's every it's profit over people, and it's just so sickening and disgusting because it's like what why are you how can you do that to your fellow citizen? Like, how can you do that to anybody? And it's just because these CEOs and stuff, they don't look at people as people, they look at them as like profit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not great. And as a, consumer or patient, it's even more impossible to navigate what you do have once you have it, if you get
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
not great. Okay, we do have an audience question. So, can you comment a little bit more on one of the international issues on which you feel strongly? For example, war in Ukraine, Gaza,
Mhm.
Israel, the possibility of US bombing Iran, or another one.
Yeah, I mean all of them. Right now with Gaza, it's it's so barbaric, and what's super frustrating is that we ourselves, the United States, we're violating our own laws. Like we have laws that say we cannot give any aid to a country that blocks US humanitarian aid, which Israel has done. And it's why aren't we doing this? And I honestly feel like it's probably corruption with the Epstein files. Personally, I don't know. But I think that's part of it. And also it's just like wars are profitable, unfortunately, right? And who donates to your Congress representatives' campaigns? Manufacturers that basically build these bombs. And that is like it's so simple, but it's so hard that it's like every single issue we have comes down to the same root cause, which is the money in politics and the corruption it has taken. Every single issue. Like I truly it's like every candidate should just be running on banning PACs and paid lobbyists and moving to publicly funded elections. Like that should be the litmus test for every single candidate for Congress, period. That because that's the only way we're going to get reformed. That's the only way we're going to stop things. Because I see other candidates kind of say like they say it with their whole chest about free Palestine and Palestinian rights, and I agree with that. But it's like, what do you look at the root cause though? Because even if you get there, there are so many people who are corrupted. Hakeem Jeffries, like, there's so many people corrupted already. It's like we have to change this guard by taking the money out of politics.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been more of a presence in this primary race than I've ever seen, and I know we're kind of potentially in our own echo chamber, but my hope is that people are starting to learn more about it and start to realize how much of an influence it has on everything.
Yeah, it's truly the root cause of of this of all of our pain points, honestly.
Definitely. All right, another audience question. Danny, former represent or soon to be former representative Danny Davis has endorsed LaShawn Ford. What impact do you think that has had on the race, and how do you, as a candidate, overcome a boost like that?
Yeah, so I think it's there are two things about that. So I've heard a lot of other candidates say that Danny Davis was a pillar of the community or is a pillar of the community and fought so hard. But when I canvassed, like in North Lawndale, I did not hear a lot of great things about Danny Davis. So it's kind of like I can only go based off the feedback I've seen because when I don't know what he's done lately, but he's also elder. So I don't want to like throw shade at him, do you know what I mean? But I don't know if it does help because when I think about the some voters feel like Danny Davis forgot about them and their district, and especially on the south side in North Lawndale. And even when I go to forums and it's me and LaShawn Ford, like the Garfield Forum is the great example I'll use is like there was one person who was like, I think I was going to vote for Ford, but I think you changed my mind on that. And that is huge. And it's again the strategy part. I think it's refreshing for voters to hear somebody who actually tells you what they can do and what they can't do. Like I'm trying to be as realistic as possible based on the knowledge I have. And obviously, when I'm in Congress, I'm going to have a whole new level of knowledge and resources and tools to leverage. But I think that's the striking difference between me and every single candidate in this race.
Makes sense. Okay, one more audience question. Can you talk a bit about what role you see the federal government having in making housing more affordable? Do you support closing tax loopholes that incentivize investors treating housing like every other asset?
Yes, I definitely support that. Housing is meant to be lived in, not like I understand you get a little profit, right, when you decide to downsize because you're retiring and all of that. Okay. Or maybe you want to have your son or your daughter or your child to take that property and keep it. Like that's fine. But right now, what we're seeing are these corporations buying up housing and letting them sit vacant because they can write it off as a tax write-off. Um, and they're also trying to just control the market like a monopoly and make it's truly unaffordable. So the federal government needs to step in on that 100%. There are a couple things, like I said, with the grants. I think it was like North Lawndale or Austin just got like a huge initiative to like build more affordable housing. Also, we can take abandoned federal buildings as a Congress representative. That's the federal surplus. The nonprofits have first right of refusals, is what it's called. So we can get abandoned federal buildings, use grant money to turn them into affordable housing. But I do think that we should have legislation in there so that we don't have like BlackRock buying all of our housing and making it's truly unaffordable to live in America currently.
A follow-up on that, do you see any value in a cap on the percentage over the purchase price that either an investor or individual can sell a house for?
I think the cap is kind of, again, it's treating a symptom, not the disease, because if we had fair taxes, it wouldn't matter what you sold it for, we would tax you. And I keep hearing like taxing like CEOs pay, or sorry, capping CEOs pay. And it's like, again, for me, that's not a strategic way to tackle that. If you just have fair taxes, it doesn't matter how much they pay or how much they get paid. You're going to tax them at that progressive rate. And if you close these tax loopholes and tax their actual stocks because rich people hide their money in stocks. Same with Congress representatives, right? They hide their money in their stocks, which is a huge conflict of interest when you have like an Amazon stock and you're doing laws on Amazon. So huge conflict of interest. But that's where I'm just like, is that the right solution? I think just having fair tax system would basically cure all of that.
Got it. All right. A couple more from our question bank. So the past few questions, you've mentioned some of the areas of District 7 that may have some infrastructure needs or felt a little bit more left behind over the years. How does your
Yeah.
HEAL Act specifically address those infrastructure needs, such as replacing lead pipes?
Yeah, so the HEAL Act does not address that because the HEAL Act is like there's only 3 to 5 goals in there because I'm bringing my corporate experience from that. Like you don't want to have like more than 5 long-term goals because then you're stretching your resources too thin and you're going to every single direction. So 5 goals max, but I know the HEAL Act is long term. My strategy for um like lead pipes and everything is like that community funding project. Also, um Chicago got this huge influx of money to start replacing the lead pipes. So my concern with that, because Chicago also got like millions of dollars to prevent flooding that happens in Garfield, and they still haven't worked on that. So what ends up happening is that the federal government gives Illinois, like or Chicago, a ton of money to do these initiatives, but there's so much bureaucracy happening that like that money doesn't get to the places it needs to get, and it goes through pockets and pockets, lining pockets of contractors, politicians, and all of that. So what I would do is actually file an investigation because this money needs to get to the places that it needs to be quickly. You can also change because for federal, anything sent, if any corporation gets federal money, they have to follow the federal rules and laws that you can implement in that. And part of that is what we can tweak in there is actually having a time limit. So that this money doesn't sit. And a lot of times, some people keep that money and have it sit in like a bank so that it gets interest on it. And it's like, again, that is not our job. Our job is to help our constituents as quickly as possible without losing quality. So I just think it's just so over bloated that like that's why people don't see the benefits that they actually get this federal money. And so it would be a lot of auditing, to be honest with you, which I think the government is in desperate need of anyways, to make sure people are doing their job and doing it quickly and effectively.
Makes sense. This is a little bit of a fun one. How has your experience as a performer at Second City helped you connect with voters during a self-run campaign?
Yeah, so I think it's just like I'm an extrovert, so I love talking to people. And the other thing is like just being there's truth in comedy. That's like the golden rule with comedy is like you don't chase the laughs, you just make the statement. And so I have found a lot when I'm in conversations with people, like I'll say something, and because I'm not a career politician, I'm not filtering myself, because I'm worried about like what my donors would think or worried about like losing a voter base. Like I'm just kind of being real and talking the truth, and they always laugh about it. Like when we were at the Oak Park Temple Forum, we were talking about Oak Park in general. I was like, Oak Park's great. I was like, your taxes are insane, but look how you invest in them. And they all like cracked up. And it's just like, if you are just being your authentic self, I think that's what connects me the most with voters. And also listening. Like the biggest part of improv when you're building a scene together is listening to your scene partner, taking in their feedback, taking in their reality, and building upon that. So and I'm just like a problem solver at my heart. And so when someone's like, this is my issue, I'm like, okay, wait, let's think about this. How can I help you right now? That was like what happened with the Indivisible meet and greet when I was like, what's your most pressing concern? And they're like, healthcare, because I don't have a job right now. And I was like, wait a minute, there's a solution for this. So that's like constituent services right there. So I think it's just those have really helped me. And then also on the debate stage, like, I don't have a problem with that. I went to this event, and I wasn't meant to speak at the event. And somebody was like, do you want to speak since you're running for Congress? I was like, yep. And I popped up on that stage and I was like, we're going to wing it. And it went fine and it went great. And it's just, I'm not scared of public speaking and I'm not scared to talk like off the cuff. And I'm also will admit, it's like, you know what? I 100% do not know enough about that to be able to give you a great answer, but I will research this and follow back up with you. So that's the other thing that I learned in the corporate world, that it's okay to say, I don't 100% know about that, but let me do some research and circle back.
Yeah, I think people are just yearning for regular people to be in Congress and run for
Yeah.
Congress and just hear some normalcy. So totally makes sense. All right. One other question from the audience. Can you tell us a bit about whether you see value in a public option that lets people keep private insurance as a step towards single payer healthcare?
Yes, 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 yes. Actually, that's the HEAL Act too, is because I do understand people want to keep their own private insurance, and I see it in other countries. So, what ends up happening in other countries is they have the public healthcare as like their base, and they can either continue with that or they can upgrade essentially by getting additional healthcare from their corporation, from their company. So, what is built in the HEAL Act is that it's voluntary. If you want the public health care, you can get that. And then your employer pays like a 3% employer tax to help fund that health care. But it's optional for the employee. So they can keep their private insurance or still keep the private insurance that they bought. Because it's about change management too, right? I don't want to force somebody into a public healthcare if they don't want to do that, because you have choices. And I think that's great. So you can get the private insurance and then you can see like how the private insurance compares to the public insurance, and then transition into the public insurance if you want it, or keep your employer insurance. So I totally believe in that. And that is actually a part of the HEAL Act.
Great. Um, I believe you've worked on DEI initiatives professionally. How does that
Mhm.
experience translate into, things you would try to get done in Congress, and how you would work with both constituents and fellow legislators?
Yeah, so diversity is not diversity and inclusion is not a bad thing. And I always make this comparison. It's like if diversity was so bad, why do financial advisors say to diversify your stock portfolio? And even studies show that like having more diverse groups, you get different perspectives. And that's what you need when you're building a policy, especially a national policy. You want to see how the other perspectives, their views and their thoughts on it to integrate it into a universal policy that represents everybody. So, for example, when I build healthcare policies, I look at my demographics. Like, okay, how many families do we have? How many dependents do they have? How many women do we have? And then we also like ask people like, what do you wish your healthcare could do for you? And for women, it's a lot of like, can we get better fertility treatment? Can we get better coverage on freezing our eggs? So, like, working and building that into that because, again, I have my perspective, but getting other people's perspective helps. It also creates buy-in, right? Like, if I build something in a silo, like the HEAL Act was not built in a silo. I did a bunch of research to see what were the main things that people were asking for across the nation. And that's the other thing is getting buy-in is by like asking people. So the first thing I would do is like actually ask people for feedback. And that was actually how I got Republicans to sign my petition sheets to get on the ballot because I'd say, "Hi, I'm running for Congress. This is my bipartisan policy." And they're like, "I'm a Republican." And I was like, "That's okay. Can you give me feedback on this?" And so many Republicans were like, "Oh, I actually like this. I like that. I don't like ranked choice voting. I don't like getting rid of the electoral college." And I'm like, "Okay, okay." But the corruption was the key thing that a lot of them really zeroed in on. And then what a lot of Republicans said to me that they would vote for me is because one, I know what I'm talking about. I actually have a plan. They could tell that I care, and I took the time to talk and engage with them. And I think that's the most critical thing is like again, let's not ignore and not go on Fox News. Do I agree with that it's a news network? No. But like I don't agree that it is a news network. It's kind of like not no cited sources or anything like that. And but I would still go in there because maybe with me there, I'm reaching across the aisle to some voter in a red state that is thinking differently. And that's how you have to bridge these gaps is by just going into those spaces.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. A follow-up on the public option question, wouldn't this end up stratifying access or quality of healthcare?
So that is a common misconception. A lot of people worry that the quality of healthcare will go down with a public option. But studies show that it actually people have better healthcare outcomes, especially in like in Europe that they have this because people actually go to get their preventative disease, like preventative checkup, right? People don't go to get preventative care because they don't have healthcare. They're scared of the bill. And so when they get that preventative care and their checkup, they catch things earlier, which is means it's a better outcome in terms of treatment and it's less costly. The other reason I think one of the reasons why even now, if you look at our healthcare now, it takes forever to get an appointment. At least for me, I don't know about other people, but it takes like I have to book my appointments like a month out, 2 months out. And I think the reason is because we've truly made it such an obstacle to actually be a healthcare provider. We have insane costs with education. That's why I want free education. Because if someone wants to be a doctor or nurse, I want them to be a doctor or nurse. And if a financial thing is blocking them, I'd like to remove that because we need more doctors, we need more nurses, we need more healthcare providers. And so that's why the HEAL Act is like, it's a holistic plan of in order to build that pipeline into having great healthcare, you have to have the workforce behind it who's educated and trained. And with a big, beautiful bill, they're capping student loans, which means it's going to be even harder for people to become doctors and nurses. And that's such the frustrating thing that I'm seeing is like what these corporations are doing when they buy these Congress representatives is they're thinking of short-term gains and not long-term gains because you could still get huge economic boost if you give people a living wage, if you educate them, if you make them healthy. And so I just think it's such a short term profit that they're looking for versus the long-term investment. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. If it did not, please follow up. I will get more into details.
There's one more follow-up on that. If some do have private insurance and some have public insurance, do those with private have an edge in access or quality?
No, it would be the same access and quality. And this is a great example of what I did at a previous company of mine when I built healthcare. So, what you'll typically see in healthcare plans at corporate America, right, is like you'll get the high deductible health plan, which is could be a smaller network of doctors. And it's really for people who only go for the preventative care, which is covered at 100%. They're not really going for any major surgery. They don't have any like existing medical issues. They don't plan on starting a family or anything. And then you have like the medium tier, which is like a PPO, which is a little bit more expensive, has a bigger network. And then you have the Cadillac tier, which is like very expensive, but has a huge network. And so I did not think that was equity and inclusive personally. So what I did was, regardless of what plan you're on, you get the same great network, the big network. There's just different ways to pay, right? The high deductible health plan, you pay more when you actually need like the surgery or anything or the medication. That's when you pay more. And the medium tier is like you pay more, but you pay more from your paycheck, but less at the doctor. And the Cadillac tier is like you pay a lot on your paycheck, but like barely anything at your doctor. But again, every single one of those tiers has the same network and the same options available because I did not think that was equitable or inclusive. I don't believe we should punish folks. That's how I felt it was, is like you're punishing folks because they want to pay a different way for their, so it's like different ways to pay, but still the quality network.
Got it. Got it. Switching topics a bit, but still from the audience. So, can you tell us what kind of ground operation you'll be running over the next few weeks as we approach Election Day?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there are forums popping up constantly. We just got an invite literally today for another forum. So that's the biggest thing, is like forums. I'm also visiting churches, and also the other piece that I do is, which actually is where I've met some Indivisible members, is like hitting up the CTA stations, because what I've found is like knocking on doors is Chicago, they don't like to answer the doors.
No,
Point
it's
blank
true.
period. So that is like and even when I phone bank, when folks are like, "Can you just send me a text? This would be easier if you sent me a text." So it's like even phone banking is not like, people don't like answering calls. And I know
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah,
And so people want text messaging. So pivoting to text messaging, because that's like, again, getting that feedback from folks when I'm phone banking, that they're like, "Can you just send me a text with like the details on it?" And then yeah, kind of guerrilla kind of warfare, if you will, where it's like, where are the most dense popular places that I can go to? Because not a lot of people know that they're voting, and targeting not just primary voters. I feel like a lot of people are targeting primary voters. It's like, no, let's get the voter turnout higher, because right now it's only 14% of the district votes in the primary. Nationally, it's 20%. And it's intentional, right? Because people don't really, on the media, they don't talk about the primary election. Not really. They really talk about the general election, which is the primary election is the real election, especially for a blue state like Illinois and even the swing states, right? So that's kind of my thing, is like getting meet and greets, and also scheduling. We're having meet and greets at different libraries in the district so people can come and chat with me. But yeah, it's like, okay, forum. I think we have like three forums this week. And so yeah, that's kind of like my ground game, is trying to get the voter turnout up. And I think with my policy and with the like very visible transparency that I'm bringing and very visible strategy. When people look at my website compared to other candidates, they're like, "Oh, you have a very robust strategy here." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not." And the other thing is like folks may disagree with me, and it's like, send me your feedback. I have a feedback option on my website, so let me know what I can do better, or any adjustments I can make. And I've gotten feedback and I've made those updates too. So it's been working pretty well. So I think people get really excited when they hear about the HEAL Act, and like also see the different ways that I can leverage the loopholes in House rules.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on the voter turnout. It's there's so many ways you can vote in Chicago too and vote early. It's like
Hmm.
just gotta get people out. Um,
Um,
especially with
I
oh, go ahead.
sorry, Megan. Eric here, I'll jump in quick. So, I think since Jasmine is competing with the State of the Union, um, I think it's only fair. I'll jump in and say, if anybody wants to volunteer, I am actually helping to coordinate getting out canvassing for Jasmine. So, if anybody wants to volunteer, feel free to reach out for me. Reach out to me if you want to do phone banking, you want to get out there in the streets. Um, I figure I should also just mention that. Some people know, some people don't. But anyways, I figured that wasn't too unfair of a plug since Jasmine is competing with, the drama that is Donald Trump. Okay, I'll butt out.
I thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and a plug for canvassing in general too. It's can be scary if you've never done it, and people don't answer the door a lot, but the conversations you do have are good, and it feels good to get out in the community. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, all right, we've got. Let me see. This is also from the audience, what is a niche or nicher issue that we haven't spoken about yet that you have a particular passion about and why?
We talk about party dues, which is really important. I think it's really I think I talked about this a little bit, but like my biggest concern is this like parasocial relationship that people have, because it started with FDR really, where he did the fireside chats. And FDR was not perfect. I'm not saying he was, but like, hey, he got us the New Deal, and basically created the middle class. And he did that by doing radio. Like he was doing radio at the time, so people would listen to the fireside chat. And then we saw it with Ronald Reagan, right? He used the media to showcase him as like this perfect nuclear family, and then he did Reaganomics. So it's just like I think my biggest concern, and I'm guilty of this too, is where I'm like, oh, this person seems good. They seem nice, and then I didn't do a deep dive in their policies and stuff. And it's just like if we keep voting on this parasocial relationship, I don't think we're going to get far, because that is how people kind of use manipulation, where they say these, even at forums I hear it. It's like they say these words that are triggering in a positive way, where you're like, yes, I get emotional about it. And like, then you remember that emotion when you look at that candidate. But when you listen to them, are they saying any strategy? Are they saying how they're going to do it? And if they're not, then I think it's okay to recognize that and say, well, I may feel a certain way about somebody, but like I need to take the emotion out of it and actually look at them as a candidate and the strategy behind it, because that's what I'm seeing. It's only gotten worse with social media, and it's so it's it's kind of heartbreaking, because that's where you see people where they will, even if they see red flag after red flag after red flag, they'll still stick with that candidate because they're looking at that person with loyalty, kind of like a Bears fan with the Chicago Bears. But like again, these are employees and I know some people would be like, I don't like that you said that. Like this person is my friend, but it's a conflict of interest if you're saying that they're your friend. Like you have to truly look at them as an employee. So that's where I think that's like the biggest thing, where I'm like, I think it's very hard for people to hear, especially if you really, really, really like somebody, but it's like, let's look at their competencies. Let's look how their policies and their strategy. And I think if we start doing that, we'll start to get a different change in Congress because of it.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting topic. Like I think I've really mostly thought about it in terms of like social media influencers or
Hmm.
celebrities and things like that, but it is absolutely happening with candidates and elected officials as well. So, um,
And I also
interesting.
think like the code switching, I've seen a lot of that with our candidates in this race, which is It's really, it's kind of just heartbreaking because then I'm the one who calls it out and people get mad at me for calling it out. And it's like, guys, don't kill the messenger, please. Um, because I've seen it where like when we were at the Oak Park Temple Forum, I was the only candidate on that stage, and there were progressive candidates on there who would say genocide on their Instagram and on their website and say it with their full chest, but I was the only candidate who said genocide at that forum. And it was again demonstrating that like I will tell the truth no matter what space I'm in or who I'm talking to because it's the truth. I'm not going to lose my integrity over over a vote. I won't. And I'm sure I lost voters in there and at that Oak Park Temple Forum. They were very nice and gracious. Like I was a little worried when I was like, I gotta say it. And even though the progressive who didn't say it, he actually leaned over and said, "Thank you for saying that." And it's like in my head, I was like, "Why didn't you say it? Like, I don't understand." And then we had to do a questionnaire. It was the Jewish United Fund questionnaire. And it's like all the candidates who are progressive were like two-state solution, which is I do align with that. But then on their website, they don't talk about two-state solution. They are very, very uh like we need to get the Gaza back to Palestinian. Israel, it's not a Jewish state. And it's like why are you code switching? And that is a huge red flag for me because it's like, where else are you code switching? And some candidates who are very progressive and have a hard, like, strong stance on like the genocide happening in Gaza didn't even go to those forums, didn't even complete the questionnaire. And it's like, why are you hiding? You shouldn't, as a representative, you have to represent everybody, and that does mean going and talking to people who will not agree with you, but like sharing that space with them so that you find some alignment, or maybe they see your humanity. And so that's where it's just like I'm not, again, I don't code switch, nor am I scared to go into any space to fight for what's right. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to keep my integrity and I'm not scared if I ruffle feathers. I truly am not. At this point, our democracy, we don't even have one. We can't afford to be scared anymore.
Awesome. Here's another change of topic from that, but from the audience, do you support any kind of rent control policies?
Oh, yes, definitely. I definitely do that. Just especially with this, like how, because again, New York's a great example where they just leave these spaces unrented so that they can take a tax credit because it'll be better for them. And it's like, no, this is not okay. And look, money corrupts and greed. Like those are just unfortunately that is how humans are. They look at like the profit and they're like, if I make more profit keeping it empty instead of doing rent control, then that's better for me. And people like they put like a 30% increase on rent. That's insane for somebody to do that when people are living literally paycheck to paycheck. And it's just like it's no, we need to put something there personally. And yeah, that's how you're able to keep affordability. And it's like these landlords, you're still going to make profit. You're still going to make profit. Like I don't, and there's even grants to help with rebuilding things. So it's just like, I just think it's a very lazy thing.
Definitely. Right. Gonna pull another one from our question bank. Let me see here. Um, let's see. Okay. Um, sorry, I'm just going through here. Okay, back on the corporate PAC dominance, basically
Yeah.
situation. Short of a constitutional amendment, what other immediate reforms do you think could meaningfully weaken the corporate PAC influence?
I think so so what ends up happening is that these corporate PACs finance the candidate's campaign. There's a study, I think it was like the Sunlight Foundation, and like corporate PACs, I think, put 3.5 billion into campaigns, and they got from the government 4.4 trillion dollars of federal money. you know what we can do with 4.4 trillion? Finance the whole HEAL Act. That's what we can do. And so will try to do, and what I would do personally is like when a company gets federal dollars, there are a lot of requirements that they need to fulfill. And a lot of them don't do it because nobody audits them. That's why. Like even right now, oh, I won't go on that tangent. I'll tell it in a minute. But nobody audits them. So what I would do was I will audit every single federal one I can find because if they're not fulfilling the requirements, we can freeze their funding for like 3 years. And that is directly hitting their pockets because if I'm a corporation and I know I'm not going to get any federal money, then I'm not going to donate to a campaign, or maybe I will to try to fight it. So that's one way to do it is just audit them and make sure that they are actually following the federal laws, but for that federal money, but also put in adjustments into those. So you can put in, I forgot the terminology, it's not an amendment, but it's basically like, it's kind of like an amendment. You stick it in there, and unlike an amendment, they can't veto it. They have to veto the whole bill, which they may not want to do. And where you can really slip it in, honestly, is the funding for the military because they won't want to veto that. But if you put in like regulations for like contracting in there, that could be one way to like just screw them over, which is like, let's just do it. Let's like, honestly, let's just be these people who are going to leverage every single weapon and every single loophole to just screw over these packs because they're killing us. At the end of the day, that's what they're doing. They'd rather their citizens die so that they can make a profit.
Yeah. Seems to be the theme that is tying back to everything. So yeah, it's just hopefully over the years we'll get this addressed. But here's a topic we haven't yet covered, kind of surprisingly actually, but do you support abolishing ICE? If you do, can you talk about how you might go about doing that and what would come after for immigration enforcement?
Yeah, so 100% abolish ICE, but also like why are we just saying like impeach Christie Nome? Like our Constitution literally says we can impeach and remove the president and vice president if they levy war against the United States, and if they do, and if they bribery, which what happened in Minnesota is exactly those two things because you have to do it twice essentially. When you kill two citizens, we have it recorded, we have multiple witnesses. That in my opinion, you have levied war against the United States. You used a federal agency to kill American citizens. I don't understand a clear definition of that. Also, when Pan Bondi was saying, "Hey, we'll take ICE out if you give us your voter files," that's bribery. Like she said it in a very legal way, but if you distill that down, that's bribery. Which what I would do is also partner with every single like I think we're gonna knock on wood. I pray to God we get the House. Can we impeach and remove him? Because those are the two articles we can based on the Constitution. Because again, no Congress representatives, they don't take an oath to a party, a president, anything. They take an oath to the Constitution. So why are they not defending the Constitution? And if they can't defend the Constitution, then they shouldn't be in office. And for those who won't defend it, and if they're a Democrat, I'm gonna be calling their constituents being like, hey, they're not doing this because they're corrupt. And I have no problem ruffling feathers that way. But that's what I would do.
Makes sense. Great. Um, Going back to some of your corporate experience, um, did you ever have to advocate for equal pay in the workplace, and what could we do federally to finally close the wage gap?
Yeah, so I actually do audits at my workplaces for equal pay. So basically, I'll go into the compensation stuff, but everybody has a level, right? Like you can be like a L1, L2 for your role. So like if I am a human resource business partner and I'm doing the same work as a human resource business partner that is maybe in Texas, but they're a male, we should have equal pay for equal work. That it's that simple. Yes, the cost of living is different for, it's more expensive to live in New York than it is for California. So that could be one reason why that it would be a little bit different. but that's where you kind of look at the percentage. It's called a compa ratio. That's the so that you can take the cost of living out of it and see, okay, is everyone within like this compa ratio? And if not, why? So I do audits all the time for equity and inclusion. So if there is a issue where somebody's not, it's not equal pay for equal work, we fix it with an equity adjustment. And so we just tell them, we're like, hey, this is equity adjustment. Um, and we believe in equal pay, equal work, and that's why. Which honestly, the employees are very happy about it. They don't know that the audit is happening, and then in we do an annual comp cycle every year. Every company does that. And we do a bucket for equity, and we train managers on, hey, your own conscious and conscious biases, because that's the other thing that you really have to tackle with leadership. And just like human beings, every single person has biases, whether they're conscious or unconscious. It's just how our brain works. So educating our leadership on these conscious and unconscious biases, like you're going to like someone who reminds you of you. That's just kind of how it works. But you have to look past that and look at like the quality of the work, because a lot of times women are, unfortunately, they get the detriment of unconscious and conscious biases. People think that aggressive women are, or women who have strong personalities are too aggressive, which is like, if they were a man, would you feel that way? Probably not. And so, or like women of color, like with me, it's like when I get annoyed or frustrated or like heated or animated, it does scare people. And it's like, if I was a man, would this be a problem? Maybe if I was a person of color and I was male, yeah, you'd probably still be scared. Because again, it's like unconscious biases that you've gotten from the media and stuff. So those are some ways that I've tackled DEI and equity and pay. And then to do it for the government, that's the where you put in those little, they're not amendments. I'll find the right word for it. I'm sorry, y'all. But you can put that in there where it's like, equal pay for equal work. Because if you do it based on diversity, the current administration is going to just cut it up. But if you say equal pay for equal work, that's a rebranding. So that's like my other thing is like, okay, you don't want DEI, let's rebrand that into something that does not look like DEI at all, but is still DEI.
Got it. Yeah, you've definitely thought through all of the little loopholes. I love it. Um, Audience question. Can you talk a bit about your position on preventing gun violence? The HEAL Act is a big swing. What about passing big swings in gun regulations?
Yeah. I definitely want to do, let's talk about gun violence. So when we look at violence within our, we'll say District 7, right? What is the root cause of it? It's because it's been historically redlined, and that is a lot of areas that have high crime. Is they don't have a living wage, they don't have, some of them don't have jobs, some of them, this was the only path that they could take because they didn't have before and after school programs. There was no public college they could go to that was affordable. So it's like that is how we can stop violence. Like it's been proven in multiple cities from different mayors who have invested in the community with different social things that folks can do, like investing in the community so that they don't need to turn to violence for that. So that's one aspect of it, and it's multiple approach, right? The other thing is like, yes, I want universal background checks. Yes, I want mental health checks. But also now at this point, I'm like, because you always have to think, how will the current administration use this against you? And my concern is, and this is like worst case scenario, because I always think worst case scenario, if we start to put these like background checks in and like mental health checks in, are they going to then say everybody who's a progressive can't have a gun? Like, do you know how they can turn it against you? So like that's something that I've just been thinking about recently, but I do think that we need to have background checks, and the black market for guns is that needs to be cracked down on. So those are some things that I'm like thinking of, like how to reduce the gun violence is like if we invest in these neighborhoods and these districts, it will help reduce crime, not only in that district, but like across the district as well. Um, and then trying to do background checks. But again, we have been fighting gun reform since Columbine, right? Like that was like what the shooting, and how far have we gotten with it? And it's all comes back to the same thing. And it's like it's the PACs and the lobbyists that have bought our Congress representatives. And I get frustrated because like I feel like I'm the only one saying this and everyone else is like not saying it or they're scared to say it because they have PACs already supporting them. And it's just like, guys, we have to call a spade and let's start fighting that.
Definitely. All right. So I think we're gonna kind of wind down with two fun questions. I have two fun questions. The first one is there a spot in Chicago, maybe District 7, but all of Chicago is fine, that you love to go to recharge or take a break from the campaign trail?
I would say, I'm trying to think. Any food place, that's where I go to recharge. So there's Juanita's Kitchen in Inglewood. So after every forum or after every canvassing event I do, I find the local spot to eat. And so after the Inglewood one, I went to Juanita's Kitchen. Y'all, the soul food of that place is phenomenal. The greens were amazing. The fried catfish was amazing. So like that's what I always do is like go to, so that's my recharge. That's my love language is like I'm gonna go recharge with food right now. So I
Feel
would say
that.
Juanita's Kitchen, Rick Benny's. That
Love
oh, if you've never
Benny's.
had a breaded steak, please go.
I
They
have.
even have protein, y'all. Like, and they have an eggplant one too if you're like vegetarian. So yeah,
Yeah, that is. My husband is from South Side or South Suburbs, and Ricobene's. It is.
yeah.
Um,
I'm from the South Side too, Marquette Park. So that's why probably.
nice. Yeah, you idea for a social media post. You should do some like a food tour of the Seventh District.
Yeah.
Um, okay, cool. And then what is something, a book, a podcast, or a show that you've been obsessed with lately?
I'm gonna have to go with Bridgerton. They released their first three episodes, and my sister-in-law, she just had a baby. Well, she's a month old. My niece is a month old, and she's like, "I watched the Bridgerton stuff. It was really good." I was like, "Okay, I'll watch it soon." And so I watched it like I think like last week sometime, and it was so good. I love
Love
period
it.
pieces.
Love it. It's on my list. Haven't done it, but I'm sure you're short on time in the past couple weeks. But
Just a
glad
little
to
bit.
glad to hear you can still binge watch a little bit. All right. Well, thank you so much for all of your time. This has been super valuable, and thank you everyone for all of your great questions.
Yeah, thank
If
you
there
so much, everyone. I appreciate it.
if there isn't any other questions, I can turn it over to Eric to close us out. Anything, Eric?
No, not much to add. Great job, Megan. And thank you very much, Jasmine, for speaking with us. As I said, I'm pretty sure you got shortchanged here. So the State of the
That's
Union,
okay.
we had a lot of
That's totally okay.
signups. Yeah, yeah.
No,
But
you're
so
totally
anyways,
fine. And it's
yeah,
recorded,
yeah,
so people can see it
it
at their
is.
leisure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
we'll get the link out to everyone. And yeah, a plug for if you want to chat with Jasmine or any of the other candidates. West Loop chapter is doing a meetup on March 7th at 10 a.m. at the West Loop Library. So come on out to that and we can chat more.
For
amazing.
actually, yeah, for the recording, if you wouldn't mind, Megan, do you want to do your just who you were and whatnot? I don't think I actually got the recording up in time for that.
Yeah, sure. So I am Megan. I am a member of the Indivisible Greater West Loop chapter. We've been chatting and working with Indivisible downtown on all things Illinois 7 race. So I was happy that they asked me to moderate tonight and got to know Jasmine a little bit more. I'll include a link too. I was just looking if you don't want to turn on the State of the Union, although I'm sure there's like probably 2 hours remaining because he said there's going to be like it's going to be long or whatever.
Yeah.
There's like a People's State of the Union happening. I think it's moveon.org/live if you are interested in doing that. So
Nice.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
cool.
Jasmine, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, just thank you so much for doing this forum. And yeah, I just really appreciate everything Indivisible is doing to bring civic engagement to the community. As an Indivisible member, I'm so proud to be one. And it's just like, it's such a great organization. So thank you so much. And thank you for taking your time to do this as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a good night, all.
Thank you.
Have a good
Take care,
one.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.